It's December 21st, 2018. Happy solstice. I just thought I'd put together a few slides here to celebrate this rather magical spiritual time. It can be viewed in a variety of ways. We can dryly look at it as the phenomenon of the astronomical perspective of the Earth in its cycle around the sun and with its axial tilt, etc., producing this effect of the shortest hours of daylight here in the northern hemisphere. And of course, it's the opposite in the southern reaches of the southern hemisphere, where in fact it's actually summer solstice. It's rather interesting that way. But the winter solstice principle is, in our world linked in part to the New Year Advent, which is just about to occur in 10 days from now. And in that regard, with our North Star and our North Pole, etc., there's a orientation to it being the more official of the two winter solstices. Now that's something of a biased term, but however you wish to see it today here in the Northern Hemisphere is winter solstice. And it again holds rather special relevance from a variety of perspectives, and basically that including or specifically a new cycle of the sun, and the cycle that begins as hours of the less light, the minimum amount of light in terms of daylight hours is today, and from this day forth leading up to summer solstice on June 21st, we'll have increasing hours of daylight. So it's always a wonderful experience, and this is naturally linked to the seasons. So officially, this is the first day of winter. And the winter season, of course, is 1/4 of the year, and it leads us to spring, then summer, then fall, and back to winter. And this four seasons principle is tidally woven into the four elements and the four directions. So these principles both hold very practical, natural implications, but also something of a spiritual one, especially from the standpoint that in astrology we see how the sun's light holds a very intimate, intrinsic psycho-spiritual principle. That's the best, simplest way I could describe it. It's so amazing that how and why astrology works, because it just really speaks of a whole perspective, a holism, a holistic perspective where there are no divisions, where we live in a conscious universe, and where there can be described from a subconscious level a co-creative process, and where there's a grand continuum, a communion, a deep sense of unity. And woven within this natural environment is a deep intelligence, and which reaches into deeper dimensions, or finer, higher, deeper, however you wish to define it. And that's where we get the words esoteric and occult, hidden and within, and so forth. So yes, the wonderful theme of winter solstice comes to the fore to offer an opportunity to offer a few insights about astrology and how it works. And I'm specifically referring to Western astrology, although it does pertain to all systems of astrology. It specifically is anchored into the Western tropical astrology model. Tropical meaning the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, which are those midpoint lines between the poles, sort of imaginary as the case is, but they are the midpoints between the poles and the equator. And due to the 23.5 or so degree tilt of the Earth's axis, it's almost exactly half of 45 degrees. So, 90 degrees being 1/2 and 45 being 1/4, you can begin to see how the tilt of the Earth's axis very tidily presents this precise midpoint factor once again. So some of the astronomy here is quite wonderful. Now, so we know generally that the first day of the new year and the first minute is at midnight on January the 1st. But that's actually not nature's vote on New Year. New Year does, in fact, begin today at this moment, the new year based on nature's cycle. I always refer to the 1st of January to be sort of something of the social or legal or maybe even the governmental or banking principle of when we begin the new year. It's nice and tidy to begin the year on the first day of the month, but the astrological signs, most of you will recall, begins approximately on the 21st, with Pisces on the 19th, with other signs as well, Aquarius on the 19th. Then with the opposite signs of Virgo and Libra, it tilts to the other direction, and the sign begins on either the 22nd or the 23rd, in fact, of the month. So why these divisions are exactly as they are is not 100% easy to explain, but it is based on the celestial geometry of the Earth's axis and the period of time it takes for a cycle to be completed, which is not quite a nice tidy 360 degrees. It's 365 and a quarter days. So you start to add up all these small factors and you find that sort of fitting it into a calendar-based system is best thing you can do, and that's what all calendars have done. Western astrology is directly linked to the cycle of the sun, which in our world is linked to what's called the Gregorian calendar. The Gregorian calendar, some people kind of, look at with a certain amount of disdain, but it is the most precise calendar in the world in terms of its direct and precise relationship with the sun's light. So from that perspective, we can give it some credence both scientifically and spiritually or psychospiritually in terms of it honoring exactly the angle and degree and amount of sunlight. And as I said, astrologically, that is a remarkably powerful event. So this is where we get the or phenomenon, because the actual light of the sun that is what divides each sign. And if you study people's nature through their astrology, you'll realize that even if you're born at the 29th degree and the last minutes of a sign, you are that sign. You're not the next sign. People will talk about cusps and blends, and yes, it's true, nobody's an absolute depiction of the archetype. But on the other hand, if you're born in the last minutes of Capricorn, or Sagittarius for that matter, and instead of Capricorn, you're going to be a Sagittarius, and you'll feel that Sagittarius impulse as though you were born in a house or live in a house 10 feet away from the border, but you're Canadian, not American, or vice versa. It's that precise. It's a border principle. So yes, you could talk about blending, but no, it's very exact. So it's really wonderful how that works. Now, just a bit of the astrology for this solstice event. At the exact moment of solstice today, here, occurring right now as I speak, as a matter of fact, is the moon just prior to full. Some are saying that, full moon is coinciding with solstice, and in effect that's true, but not precisely. Also, tomorrow, Saturday, the 22nd, the moon will be full. But the exact degree of the moon at the time of solstice, which is again like a snapshot of that exact moment when the sun enters Capricorn, that's the measuring principle from the astrological perspective. The moon was in the gibbous phase, just shy of exactly full, about 11 degrees less than full. So this is the chart, by the way, of that event. And what we'll show you here is here's the sun at 0 degrees Capricorn. You see 0, 0, Capricorn 0, 0. And the moon, meanwhile, is down here in Gemini at 18 degrees. So it's not full. It would have to be at 0 Cancer here to be exactly full. So a quick take on this chart in particular, because it's basically understood by some that the solstice event, what occurs on that day, has an effect for the entire year. It's a background influence. It's not just the only one. Astrology is very much about layers of influence. So the event of the exact moment of the year, like the birth of the new year, can reveal a chart. That's also true of January 1st at midnight, by the way, largely because of the fact that we all co-create that significance. Like, in other words, the January 1st at midnight was a sort of artificial from the standpoint of nature. So it's a social factor, but because we all focus on it all over the world, we charge it with energy, and that's an example of our individual and collective co-creative ability. But going back to this chart, then the exact moment of winter solstice, which in Greenwich was at 10:22 this evening, and right now we're at just past that, just about that time, exactly, just minutes past the exact strike of the bell for solstice to occur. What we see here, in addition to other things, with that moon in Gemini, the question to ask is, well, what is the planet that rules Gemini doing? And that's Mercury. And there it is, Mercury in Sagittarius, exactly conjunct Jupiter. That's a very lovely aspect. It would be, if you were born with that, you would probably be quite intelligent, quite philosophical, a blend of both broad-minded but also astute to the details, a nice balance of perspective. A good journalist, for example. Sagittarius is the sign that's closely associated with journalism, which is a pursuit of a fair display of various points of view in an endeavor to reveal a deeper truth. So that's a nice way of describing Sagittarius. So yes, the exact conjunction between Mercury and Jupiter is quite auspicious for the year, and it refers to something of a philosophical perspective once again, and Sagittarius being very much about ethics and principles. It helps us to appreciate that that would be a part of our focus this year, what constitutes ethical, principled action. On the other hand, it can also, especially with the Sun in Capricorn, with Saturn there, that's important now. Sun, just even though it's wide, this Saturn influence right here wants us to, especially because it's in the lead position, whatever's in front of the Sun, okay, is like right here is our kind of very much our why. So Saturn in Capricorn wants us to be sober, practical, and focused on, in effect, in this particular case, doing the work necessary. And that could be described as paying our dues. Now, that does beg the question, what are we referring to? Now, that's where we go to Venus in Scorpio here. Venus in Scorpio, which I'll elaborate on another video about for the entire year. Venus in Scorpio can be seen as the need to undergo a regeneration of our values, our priorities, our approach. And, so it's saying that 2019 being the last year of the second decade of the new millennium, leading up to the all-important 2020 year. And it is important in part because there's a powerful Jupiter-Saturn conjunction coming next year. So this year, of course, stands on its own ground, but in some respects can be seen as a lead-up year to that bigger launch of a new 20-year cycle between those two planets. So it is asking us to prepare, to be visionary, to be practical, sober, to do what diligence we can to cover ground where we need to in a practical way. If everything's flowing well in your life, good for you. You have less work to do. You can enjoy that Jupiter-Mercury conjunction as more travel and sort of light-hearted social activity, perhaps. But it is fair to say that the influences of the changes that are unfolding in the world do stand to affect us all. So we have to consider the bigger picture. There's more. We can go on and on with this chart, but one more thing I want to focus on is Uranus here. Uranus at 28 Aries is at the apex point, or the point of the axis between the north node in Cancer and the south node in Capricorn. So they're always 180 degrees apart. So it just so happens Uranus is at the T-square point, and that's going to be true for some time, even through the new year. And that basically points to that, again, there's a need to forge ahead, to push through. Now, Mars in Pisces conjunct Chiron, which is the ruling planet. Mars rules Aries in Pisces here, conjunct Chiron, wants us to, again, attend to the healing that needs to occur. Now, healing could be personal, psychological, emotional, physical, but it can also be how we are in the world, or what constitutes our priorities, etc. So there's that basic theme here. So it altogether represents quite a powerful chart, really, especially also in terms of both the need to see the bigger picture and have a sense of what's coming, and to be sober about our approach with a determination to heal, regenerate, and to prepare for a bigger launch of the entire global economy, by the way, and a whole new level of expression when Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in Aquarius in 2020. So that's enough on that. Now, a few more little points around solstice. What it does also is it launches the 10-day traditional pagan celebration called Yule. And it's sort of a time between solstice and the January 1st, and I think that's where the January 1st partially emerged as the other end of the 10-day period, which was a time of basic festivity, relaxation, preparation for the new cycle, and it was celebrated in many ways. Here we see in this chart a little mandala-like shape, which shows the key points of the year, including Yule being associated with winter solstice, and then midsummer with summer solstice, and on the left, Mabon, it's referred to as spring equinox, and the other way around. It's going the other way. They usually go the other way. But anyway, spring equinox on the right, Mabon being autumn equinox on the left. So you see and then those are the cardinal midpoints, like the north, south, east, west principles. But then there's the midpoint, which would be the midpoints of the seasons. And historically, especially in the pagan tradition, which, reached far and wide for a long time, even into, the Middle Ages, etc., where the focus upon the natural cycle was very strong. Only really when the scientific revolution came around did it start to ebb a bit, but it still remains alive, and in fact is ascending again in prominence. The almanacs have stayed alive the whole time, and so too has astrology itself. So yeah, there's something of a revival of this focus going on right now. This basically is just a quick look at how that exact way of dividing a cycle, any cycle can be divided into 8 equal portions, and the turning points, the key are indicative of when events will come about, bringing about change, and when we will experience a new turn. And these are measurable as outer synchronicities. In the blur of our life, where we're not paying attention, we wouldn't notice, but that would be true of in many situations where we don't have trained perception, trained ability to see and understand what's going on. So people will dismiss that there's anything happening in a rather confident but assumptive way, because they basically don't have the ability to see and observe and appreciate the synchronicities at play. But they're there, and it's really wonderful to see them unfold, especially in my work as an astrologer, where I'm able to see who people are, where they're at, where they're going, what's coming, and help them make better choices in alignment with their destiny and the cycles of change as they unfold. So that's a bit of a look at the winter solstice, otherwise referred to as Yule time. And it's, a time which, of course, leads us to Christmas. And so in many respects, from the standpoint of Christmas, it's not seen as important, and all energy and intentions given over to Christmas and for all kinds of various social, historical reasons. But winter solstice holds its own special reason and to give attention. And as the image I showed in the first slide indicates, is that the day of winter solstice today is when all of the various chambers and henges around the world were designed to capture the sun's light in its front and center manner. So in those respects, those chambers were both spiritually charged by that light, but also it served as a measuring tool as to when exactly solstice occurs. So it was a good way of setting the collective clock to be in alignment with nature. So there's a few interesting ways of looking at it that way too. So Christmas is here in just a few days, and so I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. And a final note here about the annual Christmas discount special I have for astrology readings, which basically amounts to buy one of the, let's say, 1 hour segment and get the second 1 hour half price, or you can buy two and get the third free. So a couple of discount offers that I only offer at this time of the year at such a rate, and you can buy it for yourself or buy it for family and yourself and sort of pay it forward. So there's lots of considerations there, but it's a good time to invest to get your astrology lined up for the year and give us gifts, and it can be proven to be very profound and well-received gift, because the gift of insight and guidance, lasts a long time, especially when the insight reaches to the deeper level of your core nature and destiny, which it does. So I hope you enjoyed that. Happy New Year, happy solstice and Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next time.